My grandmother sat across from me at her marble dining table, her diamond bracelet catching the afternoon light as she stirred her tea. "So, Sophia," she said with that warm smile I'd known my whole life, "how do you spend your $4 million trust fund?" I froze, my coffee cup halfway to my lips. My heart stuttered in my chest. "What trust fund, Grandma?" Her smile faltered. The teaspoon clinked against the porcelain, too loud in the sudden silence. Her eyes searched mine and I watched the color drain from her face. "The trust fund your mother manages for you," she said slowly, her voice changing. "The one I set up when you turned 18. $4 million. I set my cup down carefully, my hand starting to shake. "Grandma, I'm 32 years old. I've never seen a single dollar from any trust fund." That was the moment everything I thought I knew about my family shattered like glass. "My name is Sophia Bennett, and I'm a pharmacist at a busy hospital in Portland, Oregon. I spent 12 years working night shifts, double shifts, covering holidays so other people could see their families. I lived in a tiny apartment with second-hand furniture, drove a 15-year-old Honda, and ate ramen more times than I want to count. I did this while my mother, my own mother, lived in a waterfront house, drove a luxury car and took vacations to Europe twice a year. And all that time there was $4 million with my name on it. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to that afternoon at Grandma's house, because that's when my world turned upside down. The silence in my grandmother's dining room stretched like a wire pulled too tight. I could hear the antique clock ticking on the mantel, each second marking the space between my old life and whatever was coming next. "Sophia," Grandma said, and her voice had gone hard in a way I'd never heard before. "Tell me everything. From the beginning." So I did. I told her about growing up in our small house in the suburbs, how Mom always said money was tight. How I worked at the grocery store from age 16, saving every penny for college. How Mom said she couldn't help with tuition, so I took out student loans. $50,000 in student loans for my pharmacy degree. "I paid them off last year," I said, and my voice cracked. "It took me 10 years, Grandma. 10 years of living on nothing, working extra shifts, skipping meals sometimes to make the payments." Grandma's hands had formed fists on the table. Her perfectly manicured nails dug into her palms. "And your mother never mentioned the trust fund?" "Not once. Never." The word came out like a stone. "She said you helped her sometimes with bills. She said you were generous but not wealthy. She said we needed to make our own way in the world." I watched my grandmother's face transform. The gentle, loving woman I'd known my entire life disappeared, replaced by someone cold and fierce. She stood up, her chair scraping against the hardwood floor, and walked to her study. I followed, my legs shaking. She pulled out a leather folder from a locked drawer. Inside were documents, statements, transaction records. Years of them. "I set up this trust fund with $4 million when you turned 18, she said, spreading the papers across her desk. "Your mother was named as the trustee. She was supposed to manage it for you, give you access when you needed it for education, housing, and starting your career. The full amount would transfer to your control at age 30. "I'm 32, I whispered. "Yes." Grandma's finger stabbed at a document. "And according to these statements, the account is nearly empty. $3.8 million withdrawn over the past 14 years. The room tilted. I grabbed the edge of the desk to steady myself. "Where did it go?" Grandma's jaw tightened. "Let's find out." We spent the next 3 hours going through every statement, every withdrawal, every transfer. My grandmother had kept meticulous records, and as we pieced together the pattern, a picture emerged that made me physically sick. The first withdrawal came 1 month after my 18th birthday. $50,000. The note said, "Sophia's college tuition." But I didn't start college until I was 19, and I paid for it myself with loans. More withdrawals followed, each one labeled for me. Sophia's apartment deposit. Sophia's car. Sophia's medical expenses. Sophia's education costs. None of it had ever reached me. Instead, I traced the timeline against my memories. The $50,000 college tuition withdrawal happened the same month Mom bought her new Mercedes. The apartment deposit matched when she renovated her kitchen with marble countertops. The medical expenses lined up with her trip to France. "She stole from me," I said, and the words felt unreal in my mouth. My own mother stole $4 million from me. Grandma's hands trembled as she reached for her phone. "I'm calling her right now." "No." The word came out sharper than I intended. Not yet. He looked at me surprised. Something was growing inside me, hot, hard and focused. For 14 years I'd struggled. I'd worked myself to exhaustion. I'd missed birthdays, holidays, any kind of social life, all to stay afloat financially. I'd eaten rice and beans for weeks at a time. I'd worn the same 3 outfits for years. I'd watched my friends buy houses, start families, take vacations while I counted pennies for bus fare. And my mother had been living off my money the entire time. Not just living off it. Thriving and flaunting on it. I remembered every time she'd rolled her eyes at my cheap clothes, every comment about my old car, every suggestion that I wasn't trying hard enough in life. I remembered her 40th birthday party at that expensive restaurant, where she'd laughed about treating herself to a designer handbag, while I'd skipped lunch for a week to afford her gift. I felt ashamed, like I was failing at being an adult. All while she spent my inheritance. I need to think, I told Grandma. I need to understand the full picture before we do anything. She studied my face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. What do you need from me? Copies of everything. Every document, every statement, every piece of proof. And I need you to not tell anyone, especially not Mom, that we know. Sophia. Please, Grandma. Trust me. She didn't like it. I could see the anger burning in her eyes, the desire to call my mother immediately and unleash years of betrayed trust. But she loved me and she trusted me, so she nodded. I'll have copies ready for you tomorrow, she said. But Sophia, sweetheart, what are you planning? I looked down at the statements spread across her desk, at 14 years of theft documented in black and white, and something cold settled into my chest. I'm going to get my life back, I said. All of it. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay in my small bedroom in my tiny apartment, staring at the ceiling, and did the math over and over. $4 million. If I'd had even part of that money at 18, I could have gone to any college I wanted, graduated without debt. I could have bought a house instead of renting. I could have taken time to find the right job instead of grabbing the first offer out of desperation. I could have helped Grandma when she had her surgery instead of watching helplessly while she struggled. I could have had a life. Instead I'd had survival. Mom, you. Every day for 14 years she'd known. I got up at 3 in the morning and opened my laptop. I started a document and began writing down everything I remembered. Every time Mom complained about money while wearing new jewelry. Every vacation she'd taken while I worked holidays. Every expensive dinner, every luxury purchase, every casual comment about treating herself. Then I looked up property records. Mom's house, the one she'd bought with savings, was purchased 8 years ago for $650,000. Cash sale. I checked the trust fund statements. $650,000 had been withdrawn that same month, labeled Sophia's housing investment. Her Mercedes was purchased 3 years ago for $90,000. The trust fund showed a $90,000 withdrawal from that month, labeled Sophia's vehicle. Every major purchase in her life for the past 14 years was funded by my trust fund, disguised as expenses for me. My hands shook as I typed, but I kept going. I needed every detail, every date, every dollar accounted for. Because I wasn't just going to confront her. I was going to destroy her. The next morning I called in sick to work. It was the first sick day I'd taken in 2 years, and my supervisor was so shocked he didn't even question it. I drove to Grandma's house and picked up 3 thick folders of documentation. Then I went to see a lawyer. Natalie Cross's office was in a sleek downtown building, all glass and steel. She came highly recommended by a colleague at the hospital, and her reputation for handling financial fraud cases was impressive. She was in her 50s with sharp eyes and an even sharper suit. I laid out the folders on her conference table and told her everything. She listened without interrupting, occasionally making notes. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair and let out a long breath. This is one of the clearest cases of trustee fraud I've ever seen, she said. Your mother had a fiduciary duty to manage this fund for your benefit. Instead, she systematically looted it. The documentation your grandmother kept is excellent. We can prove every fraudulent withdrawal. What are my options? My voice sounded steadier than I felt. Criminal charges for embezzlement and fraud. Civil suit to recover the funds. We can put liens on her assets, freeze her accounts, force the sale of property purchased with your money. She tapped her pen against her notepad. Depending on the amounts and how we proceed, she could face serious prison time. Prison. My mother is in prison. I should have felt something in those words. Horror maybe. Guilt. But all I felt was cold satisfaction. How long will this take? If we move fast and file everything at once, we can have her assets frozen within a week. The criminal investigation will take longer, but we can start that process immediately. The civil suit might take months to resolve, but with this documentation, it's almost a guaranteed win. I thought about Mom's face when her bank accounts froze. When she couldn't access her money anymore. When she realized I knew. There's something else, I said. I don't just want the money back. I want everyone to know what she did. Natalie studied me carefully. Be certain about this, Sophia. Once we start, this will get messy. Your family situation will become public. Your mother will fight back and it won't be pretty. She stole 14 years of my life, I said quietly. She let me struggle and suffer while she lived like a queen on my money. She looked me in the eye over and over and lied. I'm not looking for pretty. I'm looking for justice. Something shifted in Natalie's expression, a flicker of approval. Then let's get started. The next week was a blur of meetings, documents, and late nights. Natalie moved faster than I expected, and I learned why she commanded her reputation. She assembled a team. A forensic accountant to track every dollar. A private investigator to document Mom's current assets and lifestyle. A criminal attorney to handle the fraud charges. I kept going to work, kept my normal routine while behind the scenes a storm was building. The hardest part was seeing Mom during this time. She called me twice that week, cheerful and casual, asking if I wanted to meet for lunch. Both times I made excuses. My voice stayed steady but my hands shook as I held the phone. How did she do it? How did she look at me, talk to me, hug me, knowing what she'd done? The private investigator's report came back after 5 days. Mom's assets included her house, worth about $700,000 now, her Mercedes, a vacation condo in Arizona, and multiple high-end investment accounts. Altogether about $2.3 million in traceable assets. Where's the rest? I asked Natalie. Spent, she said bluntly. Vacations, clothes, restaurants and entertainment. $2 million just gone. Wasted on a lifestyle she'd never earned. The forensic accountant found something else. Mom had been filing tax returns claiming the trust fund withdrawals as income for managing my affairs. She'd been paying taxes on my stolen money, which was almost funny except it proved she knew exactly what she was doing. She'd structured the theft to look legitimate on paper. This actually helps us, Natalie explained. It shows premeditation and ongoing fraud. She created a paper trail trying to cover her tracks, but it just gave us more evidence. By the end of the week we had everything we needed. A complete timeline of the theft, documentation of every fraudulent withdrawal, proof of how the money was spent, and expert testimony ready to explain it all to a judge. Natalie laid it out on her conference table, a mountain of evidence against my mother. We can file Monday, she said. Once we do, everything happens fast. The court will freeze her assets immediately. The police will likely want to interview her within days. Are you ready? I looked at the documents, at 14 years of my life reduced to numbers and statements and legal terminology. Yes, I said. Do it. That weekend I did something I hadn't done in years. I took 2 days off work and went to the coast. I walked on the beach, watched the waves and let myself feel everything I'd been holding back. The anger was there, hot and raw. But underneath it was something else. Grief. I grieved for the relationship I'd thought I had with my mother. For the version of her I'd believed in, the one who was just doing her best, the one who loved me even if she couldn't help me financially. That person didn't exist. Maybe she never had. The woman who raised me had looked at $4 million meant for her daughter and decided it was hers instead. She'd watched me struggle and saw opportunity, not empathy. Every hug, every I love you, every proud smile had been a lie built on theft. I sat on the sand as the sun set and cried for the mother I'd wanted and never had. Then I went back to Portland and prepared for war. Monday morning, Natalie filed everything at once. Civil suit for recovery of funds. Criminal complaint for fraud and embezzlement. Motion to freeze assets. It hit like a bomb. By noon, Mom's bank accounts were frozen. By 3 p.m. the police had contacted her for an interview. By 5 p.m. my phone was ringing. I let it go to voicemail. Mom's voice was frantic, confused and angry. Sophia, something's wrong with my accounts. The bank says they're frozen. There's some legal issue, they won't tell me what. Call me back right away. I need your help. I listened to the message twice, then deleted it. 3 more calls came that evening. Then texts. Sophia, where are you? I need to talk to you. Please call me back, something terrible is happening. I blocked her number. Grandma called instead. Her voice was tight. Your mother just left here. She's panicking, asking if I know anything about her accounts being frozen. She kept saying there must be a mistake. I didn't tell her we knew. But Sophia, she's scared. Good, I said and meant it. Tuesday the police interviewed Mom. I know because Natalie got a call from the detective handling the case. He wanted to meet with me. Detective Frank Morrison was a 20-year veteran with tired eyes and a patient manner. We met at the police station in one of those interview rooms you see on TV, all gray walls and uncomfortable chairs. Your mother maintains this is all a misunderstanding, he said, reviewing his notes. She claims she used the trust fund money for your benefit, that your grandmother approved everything, and that you received all the funds she withdrew. I slid a folder across the table. Inside was my financial history. Every pay stub from age 16 to now. My student loan statements showing I borrowed and paid back $50,000. My rent payment history showing I'd lived in the same tiny apartment for 8 years. My tax returns showing I'd never reported any income or gifts from a trust fund. This is my life, detective, I said. Does it look like I received $4 million? He went through the documents slowly. When he looked up, his expression had changed. No, he said quietly. It doesn't. My mother stole from me for 14 years. She let me struggle and suffer while she lived off my inheritance. And when she got caught, her first instinct was to lie and blame others. I want her prosecuted. Fully. He closed the folder. We'll be pressing charges. Given the amount and duration of the fraud, the DA is looking at this seriously. I'll be in touch as the case develops. As I left the station, I felt something shift inside me. This was real now. No going back. The first news article appeared Wednesday. Local woman accused of embezzling millions from daughter's trust fund. It was a small piece, just the facts, but it was named after my mother. Monica Bennett, age 54, accused of defrauding her daughter of nearly $4 million over 14 years. My phone exploded. Friends, coworkers, distant relatives all reaching out. Some offered support. Others were clearly fishing for gossip. I ignored most of them and focused on work. But walking through the hospital, I felt the stares, heard the whispers. Everyone knew. My supervisor called me into his office. Sophia, if you need time off. I don't, I said. Work is the only normal thing in my life right now. Please don't take it away. He studied me for a moment, then nodded. Hey. But my door's open if you need anything. I made it through my shift, then went home and cried for an hour. Thursday, Mom tried a different approach. An email long and rambling. Sophia, I don't understand why you're doing this. Everything I did was for you. Yes, I managed the trust fund, but I used that money to provide you with a stable home, to pay bills, to give you security. Your grandmother set up that fund for the whole family, not just you. This legal action is tearing our family apart. Please, let's sit down and talk about this like adults. I love you, Mom. I read it 3 times, analyzing every line. Not one word of apology. Not one admission of wrongdoing. Just justification, manipulation, and attempted guilt. She'd used my money to provide me with security, while I worked 3 jobs to survive. She'd spent it on her house, her car, her vacations, and now claimed it was all for the family. And she loved me. She actually signed it with, I love you. I forwarded the email to Natalie without responding. This is good, Natalie said when she called. She's admitting she used the fund, and her justification doesn't match the legal terms of the trust. Keep anything else she sends. Mom tried calling from different numbers. She sent more emails. She even showed up at the hospital, but security turned her away when I asked them to. Each attempt made me angrier. She still thought she could manipulate me, convince me this was somehow acceptable. She truly believed she'd done nothing wrong. The preliminary hearing was set for 3 weeks out. Natalie assured me this was fast, that usually these cases took months to get to court, but the strength of our evidence and the amount of money involved made it a priority. Those 3 weeks felt like 3 years. I went through the motions of living. Work, home, sleep, repeat. But inside, I was counting down to the moment I'd face my mother in court. Grandma came over one evening bringing dinner she'd cooked. We sat in my tiny apartment and for a while we just ate in silence. "How are you really doing?" she finally asked. I set down my fork. I keep thinking about all the times I apologized to her. Apologized. For not being successful enough. For not making more money. For struggling. Like it was my fault I couldn't get ahead. My voice cracked. I felt like I was disappointing her. The whole time she was living off the money that was supposed to help me, and I felt guilty for not doing better. Grandma reached across the table and gripped my hand. "Sophia, none of this is your fault. None of it. I know that. Logically I know. But it doesn't stop me from feeling stupid. How did I not see it? How did I not question why she lived so well while claiming to have no money to help me? Because you trusted your mother. That's not stupidity, sweetheart. That's love." I pulled my hand away and stood up, pacing the small kitchen. "Well, I don't love her anymore. I don't feel anything for her except anger. Does that make me a terrible person?" "No," Grandma said firmly. "It makes you honest. Love isn't unconditional, Sophia. When someone betrays you this deeply, you're allowed to stop loving them. You're allowed to protect yourself." I stopped pacing and looked at her. "Do you still love her? She's your daughter." Grandma's face hardened. "She's not the daughter I raised. The Monica I knew would never have done this. This person, this thief, I don't know her. And no, I don't love what she's become." We sat with that truth for a while, two women who'd both lost someone we thought we knew. The week before the hearing, something unexpected happened. My father called. Dad had divorced Mom when I was 12. They'd had a bitter split and he'd moved to California. We stayed in touch, but our relationship was distant. He sent birthday cards and called on holidays, but that was about it. Now his voice on the phone was tight with anger. "Sophia, I just heard about your mother. Why didn't you tell me? I didn't think you'd care. You haven't been involved in years." "Not involved." He laughed, a harsh sound. "Sophia, do you know why your mother and I divorced?" I sat down slowly. "You fought about money. That's what Mom always said. We fought because I caught her stealing from my business. She was forging checks, moving money to secret accounts. When I confronted her, she claimed she deserved it, that she worked hard and I wasn't appreciating her. I divorced her and had to settle for less than I was owed just to get away from her cleanly." The room spun. "Why didn't you tell me? You were 12. She was your mother. I thought I was protecting you by not poisoning you against her." His voice broke. "Sophia, I'm so sorry. If I'd known she'd do this to you, I would have fought harder for custody. I would have warned you." I closed my eyes. "She's done this before. This is who she is." "Yes. And I should have stopped her back then. I failed you and I'm sorry. But I'm here now. Whatever you need, I'm here." We talked for an hour. He told me more about Mom's patterns, her justifications, her complete inability to see her own actions as wrong. It matched everything I'd experienced, and somehow, knowing I wasn't the first person she'd done this to made it easier. Not better. Just clearer. "I'll be there for the hearing," Dad said before we hung up. "You shouldn't have to face this alone." The night before the hearing, I couldn't sleep again. I lay in bed running through everything that would happen tomorrow. Natalie had prepared me. I'd have to testify, explain my financial situation and answer questions. Mom would be there with her lawyer and they'd try to make me look vindictive or mistaken. "They'll try to paint this as a family dispute," Natalie had warned. "They'll say your mother made poor decisions but didn't have criminal intent. They'll claim she believed she had the right to use the money for the family's benefit. We need to show the pattern, the deception, and the harm it caused you specifically." I got up at 2 a.m. and reviewed my testimony notes again. Every detail had to be perfect. At 5 a.m. I gave up on sleep and made coffee. Watched the sun rise over Portland. This was it. Today everything would change. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Wooden benches, fluorescent lights, the seal of Oregon on the wall behind the judge's bench. It looked like any other office building room, but the weight of it pressed down on me the moment I walked in. Mom was already there with her lawyer. A sharp-looking man in an expensive suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. She looked smaller than I remembered, pale and tired, but when she saw me, her expression hardened into something cold. I sat on the opposite side with Natalie. Dad slipped in and sat behind me, putting a hand on my shoulder. Grandma was there too, sitting straight-backed and severe. The judge entered and we all stood. Judge Helena Ramirez was in her 60s, with steel gray hair and a reputation for being fair but tough. This is a preliminary hearing in the case of Bennett versus Bennett, regarding allegations of trust fund fraud and embezzlement, she said, reviewing her paperwork. I've read the initial filings. This looks straightforward on paper, but I want to hear from both parties. Ms. Cross, you may begin. Natalie stood and laid out the case with surgical precision. The trust fund established by my grandmother, the legal terms naming Mom as trustee, the pattern of fraudulent withdrawals, the false labeling of expenses, the proof that none of the money reached me, and the evidence of where it actually went. She presented bank statements, property records, tax documents, and expert testimony from the forensic accountant. It took an hour, and by the end the paper trail was undeniable. Then she called me to testify. I walked to the witness stand, was sworn in, and sat down. The courtroom felt huge suddenly, everyone's eyes on me. Natalie's questions were gentle, building my story. She asked about my childhood, my relationship with Mom, my education and career. Then she asked about my financial situation over the past 14 years. I told them everything. Living on ramen and rice. Working 70-hour weeks. Student loans that crushed me for a decade. The tiny apartment, the old car, the constant stress of being one emergency away from disaster. Did your mother ever mention the trust fund during this time? Natalie asked. Never. Not once in 14 years. Did she help you financially when you struggled? No. She said she couldn't afford to. But you observed her lifestyle during this time. Can you describe it? I described her house, her car, her vacations. Her casual comments about treating herself and living a little. The birthday party at the expensive restaurant. The designer clothes. The remodeled kitchen. How did you feel watching her live this way while you struggled? I met Mom's eyes across the courtroom. She looked away. I felt like I was failing, I said quietly. Like I wasn't working hard enough, wasn't smart enough, wasn't good enough. I felt ashamed that I couldn't make it like she could. And I never understood how she afforded it all when she said she had no money to help me. Now you know how she afforded it. Yes. She stole it from me. Mom's lawyer objected to the word stole, but the judge overruled it. Natalie finished her questions and Mom's lawyer stood for cross-examination. He tried to make me seem bitter, to suggest I was exaggerating my financial struggles, to imply that Mom had provided me with indirect support I wasn't acknowledging. Isn't it true your mother gave you gifts over the years? He asked. Birthday gifts, yes. Small things. And didn't she provide emotional support, advice and motherly guidance? She lied to me for 14 years about $4 million. No amount of birthday cards makes up for that. He didn't like that answer. He tried several more angles, but Natalie had prepared me well. I stayed calm, stuck to facts and didn't let him rattle me. When I stepped down my legs were shaking, but I'd done it. Then Mom testified. She took the stand in a navy blue dress, looking like the perfect picture of a concerned mother. Her lawyer walked her through her version of events. I managed the trust fund as best I could, she said, her voice trembling slightly. My mother-in-law set it up, but she didn't understand how expensive it is to raise a child, to maintain a home, to provide stability. I used the funds to ensure Sophia had a good life, a safe place to live and security. Did you believe you had the right to use the trust fund money? Her lawyer asked. Yes. The trust was for Sophia's benefit, and I believed providing her with a stable home environment was for her benefit. I sacrificed my own career to be there for her. This money helped me do that. It was so smooth, so reasonable sounding. If you didn't know the truth, you might almost believe her. Natalie stood for cross-examination and her voice was cold as ice. Ms. Bennett, you claim you used the trust fund money to provide a stable home for Sophia. Is that correct? Yes. But Sophia moved out at age 18. Where was she living from age 18 to now? Mom hesitated. In her own apartment. And who paid for that apartment? She did. With her own earnings from work. While you used her trust fund money to buy yourself a $650,000 house. Correct. I needed a place to live. Did Sophia ever live in that house? No, but... Yes or no, Ms. Bennett? No. Natalie pulled out a document. This is your tax return from 3 years ago. You claimed income from trust fund management. Can you explain what services you provided to earn that income? Mom's lawyer objected. But the judge allowed the question. I managed the finances, made sure everything was handled properly. But you didn't provide any financial support to Sophia during this time. So who were you managing the money for? Silence. Ms. Bennett, did you ever disclose to Sophia that this trust fund existed? I thought she knew. Yes or no? Did you ever tell her about it? No, but I assumed my mother had. You assumed? For 14 years you never mentioned it. You never gave her a statement. You never explained where the money was going. You just spent it. On yourself. True. I was providing for our family. Your family of one. Because Sophia received nothing. Natalie's voice cut like a knife. In fact, Ms. Bennett, isn't it true that you actively concealed the trust fund's existence so you could continue using the money without accountability? That's not. You created false labels for withdrawals. Sophia's tuition when she paid her own tuition. Sophia's car when she drove a 15-year-old Honda. You documented everything to look legitimate while funneling the money to yourself. That's not trust fund management. That's theft. Mom's face flushed red. I'm her mother. I deserve. What do you deserve, Ms. Bennett? Please tell the court what you think you deserve. Mom's mouth opened and closed. Whatever she'd been about to say, she realized how it would sound. No further questions, Natalie said and sat down. Judge Ramirez reviewed her notes for what felt like an eternity. The courtroom was dead silent except for the scratch of her pen on paper. Finally, she looked up. I've reviewed the evidence, heard the testimony, and examined the financial records. The facts here are not ambiguous. Monica Bennett was entrusted with managing a $4 million fund for her daughter's benefit. Instead of fulfilling that duty, she systematically embezzled nearly the entire amount over 14 years, falsely documenting withdrawals to conceal the theft. Mom's face went white. The harm caused to Ms. Sophia Bennett is extensive and profound. She was denied educational opportunities, forced into unnecessary debt, and struggled financially for years while her own money was used to fund her mother's lifestyle. This is not a case of poor judgment or family disagreement. This is criminal fraud. The judge's voice hardened. I'm ordering Ms. Monica Bennett's assets frozen pending criminal charges. I'm ruling in favor of the plaintiff in the civil case, with full restitution required. And I'm referring this case to the district attorney for criminal prosecution. This court is adjourned. The gavel came down and it was over. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Mom's lawyer was already talking to her urgently. She looked shell-shocked, like she couldn't believe this was happening. I stood on shaking legs. Natalie gripped my arm. You did it, she said. It's done. Dad pulled me into a hug and I let myself lean against him, feeling 14 years of weight start to lift. Grandma approached, tears streaming down her face. I'm so proud of you, sweetheart. Across the room, Mom stood and looked at me. Our eyes met. I saw anger there and disbelief and something that might have been hurt. But I didn't understand. I didn't see remorse. She still didn't think she'd done anything wrong. I turned away and walked out of the courtroom, leaving her behind. The criminal trial took 6 more months. The DA charged Mom with multiple counts of fraud, embezzlement, and theft. The evidence was overwhelming, and after a week-long trial, the jury took less than 2 hours to convict her on all counts. The judge sentenced her to 7 years in prison and ordered full restitution of the stolen funds. The civil case wrapped up faster. Mom's house was sold, her luxury car was sold, her vacation condo was sold. Her investment accounts were liquidated. Altogether it came to $2.4 million. Not the full amount she'd stolen, but more than I'd expected to recover. The rest was gone, spent on a lifestyle she could never sustain once the well ran dry. With the recovered funds and what remained in the trust account, I had about $2.6 million. Not the $4 million Grandma had intended for me, but enough to change my life completely. The first thing I did was pay off the mortgage on Grandma's house. She'd been quietly struggling with payments, too proud to ask for help, and when I handed her the paperwork showing it was paid in full, she cried for an hour. Sophia, you don't need to do this, she kept saying. Yes, I do. You gave me that trust fund to help me build a life. You didn't get to see it happen the way you planned, but it's happening now. And you're part of that life, Grandma. Let me do this. She held my hands, her grip still strong despite her age. Your mother doesn't deserve you. No, I agreed. But you do. The The second thing I did was quit my hospital job. Not permanently. But I'd been working 60-hour weeks for over a decade, and I was burned out in ways I hadn't fully acknowledged. I gave 3 months' notice, trained my replacement, and then I took 6 months off. 6 months to travel, to rest, to figure out who I was when I wasn't in survival mode. I went to Italy and ate pasta without counting the cost. I visited Thailand and took a cooking class. I spent 2 weeks in Iceland watching the Northern Lights. I read books, slept in, and remembered what it felt like to not be exhausted down to my bones. And slowly, the person I was supposed to be started to emerge from under the weight of years of struggle. When I came back to Portland, I didn't go back to the hospital pharmacy. Instead, I used part of my recovered money to open my own independent pharmacy in a low-income neighborhood that desperately needed one. It was something I'd dreamed about for years but never thought I could afford. A place where people could get their medications without judgment, where we'd work with them on payment plans, where healthcare was about helping people, not just profit. I named it Bennett Community Pharmacy, and I put my grandmother's photo on the wall in my office. She'd given me the means to do this, even if it took 14 years and a betrayal to get here. The pharmacy thrived. It turned out there was a real need for what we offered, and word spread fast. Within a year, we were serving 300 regular patients, and I'd hired 2 other pharmacists to help manage the load. I finally had the career I'd always wanted, built on my own terms. Dad and I rebuilt our relationship. He visited every few months, and we'd spend weekends hiking, talking, making up for lost time. He apologized repeatedly for not being there when I needed him, for not warning me about Mom. "I thought I was protecting you," he said during one visit. "I see now I was just avoiding conflict. I'm sorry, Sophia. You're here now," I told him. "That's what matters." He met someone, a kind woman named Angela who worked as a teacher. They got married in a small ceremony, and I was his best man. It felt like building a new family, one based on honesty instead of lies. Grandma lived 3 more years after the trial. Good years where we had dinner every Sunday, where she got to see my pharmacy succeed, where she told me over and over how proud she was. When she passed, it was peaceful. She died in her sleep in the house I'd helped save, surrounded by photos of people who loved her. She left me everything in her will. Not much money, she'd spent most of it on the trust fund for me, but her house, her belongings, and a letter. "Sophia, you are the strongest person I know. What your mother did to you was unforgivable, but you didn't let it break you. You fought back with grace and dignity. You built something beautiful from the ashes. I'm so proud of you. Live the life you were meant to live. All my love, Grandma." I framed that letter and hung it next to her photo in my office. As for Mom, I only saw her once more after the sentencing. 2 years into her prison term, she requested a visit. I debated for weeks whether to go. Natalie advised against it. Dad said it was my choice. In the end, I went, not for her but for closure. The visiting room was gray and institutional, smelling of disinfectant and despair. Mom came out in her orange jumpsuit, looking older, thinner, diminished. We sat across from each other, separated by a table bolted to the floor. "Thank you for coming," she said. Her voice was quiet, stripped of the confidence I remembered. I said nothing, just waited. "I've had a lot of time to think," she continued, "about what I did. About the choices I made. So I waited. I told myself I deserved that money. That I'd sacrificed so much, given up my career to raise you, that it was owed to me." She looked down at her hands. "I see now that was wrong. The money was yours. I stole from you. I hurt you." It was the closest she'd ever come to an apology. But I noticed what was missing. "Do you understand why it was wrong?" I asked. She looked up, surprised I'd spoken. "Because it was your money." "No. Do you understand the harm you caused? Not just financially. Do you understand what you took from me?" She hesitated, and I saw the flicker of confusion in her eyes. She still didn't fully get it. "You took my 20s, I said, keeping my voice even. "You took the years when I should have been building my life, exploring who I was, making mistakes and learning from them. Instead, I was working myself to exhaustion, living in poverty, feeling like a failure. While you took vacations and bought designer handbags with my money." "I know. You don't. You know you got caught. You know you're in prison. But you don't understand that you betrayed your own daughter systematically for 14 years. You looked me in the eye and lied. You watched me struggle and saw an opportunity, not a person you loved." Her face crumpled. "I did love you. I do love you. No, I said, and the word came out hard as stone. You loved what I could give you. You loved the idea of being my mother when it made you look good. But you didn't love me enough to tell me the truth. You didn't love me enough to put my needs above your wants. Tears ran down her face. Sophia, please. I'm your mother. You were my mother. You gave that up when you chose to steal from me. I stood. I came here to tell you that I've built a life. A good life. Despite what you did to me, not because of anything you gave me. I have a successful pharmacy, people who genuinely care about me, and peace. You took 14 years from me, but you don't get the rest. I'm done carrying your betrayal. Will you ever forgive me? Her voice broke on the question. I thought about it, really thought about it. I don't know. Maybe someday for my own peace I'll let go of the anger. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean we have a relationship again. It just means I stop letting what you did define my life. I walked toward the door, then paused and looked back. Goodbye, Mom. It was the last time we spoke. 5 years after the trial, I stood in my pharmacy watching the evening rush of patients picking up medications, chatting with my staff, laughing at some joke I missed. The place hummed with life and purpose. My phone buzzed. A text from my girlfriend, Emma, a teacher I'd met at a community fundraiser. Still on for dinner at 7? Absolutely, I typed back, smiling. I had a life now. A real one. I had a career that fulfilled me, relationships built on honesty, a beautiful apartment with furniture I'd chosen myself. I had savings, security, and most importantly, peace. The trust fund that was supposed to give me a head start had been stolen, and I'd lost years of my life to struggle and betrayal. But standing there watching the pharmacy I'd built from nothing, I realized something. I'd gained something too. I'd gained the knowledge that I could survive anything. That I could face betrayal from the person I should have trusted most and come out stronger. That I could fight for myself, stand up for what was right, and build something meaningful from the wreckage. Mom had taken my money, but she hadn't taken my strength. She'd taken my 20s, but not my future. And in the end, that made all the difference. If you're listening to this and you've faced betrayal from family, from people you trusted, I want you to know something. It's not your fault. You're allowed to feel angry. You're allowed to cut ties. You're allowed to protect yourself even from people who share your blood. Family isn't about DNA. It's about who shows up for you, who tells you the truth, who has your back when things get hard. My real family ended up being my grandmother, my father, my friends, and the people I chose to surround myself with. The ones who were supposed to be there. They failed me. And I survived anyway. You can too. Thank you for listening to my story. If it connects with you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment telling me your story. And remember, justice might take time, but it's worth fighting for. You deserve better. Don't ever forget that.